Hello and good morning if you're on the West Coast or afternoon coast. So today I'm going to talk about the three qualities that Warren Buffett looks for when he's hiring people. And I think this is actually a pretty interesting presentation. And I did some reading about how he hires people in the past. And these are three things that I also talk to law firms quite a bit, as well as my own recommendations about how to do hiring. So I think you'll enjoy this presentation. And what we'll do also is after I will take questions, and you can ask questions about this or pretty much anything you have questions about. And I think will be an interesting webinar, though we also recently put a podcast up about it. But I've also heard this same quote from other people too. I watched a presentation of Michael Eisner, and by Bob Iger, and he actually picked this up from Bob Iger, or from Michael Eisner, who was his former boss. And he said that you're looking for three things generally in a person. You're looking for intelligence, energy, and integrity. And if they don't have the last one, don't even bother with the first two. And I tell them, everyone here has the intelligence and energy. You wouldn't be here otherwise. But integrity is up to you. You weren't born with it. You can't learn in school. And I really like that quote. When I graduated from law school, the speaker was Jesse Jackson, and his son was in my class, and he said his whole talk was about, can you be trusted? And the way he talks is very eloquent because he keeps coming back to the same lines and so forth. And he kept saying, can you be trusted? Can you be trusted, after a story? And he basically made, what he was saying is that the best people and really what it comes down to with everyone is whether or not you believe you can trust them. And in my life, I think that I've noticed that there's people I trust and people I don't. And many times, depending on the circles you travel in, there's a lot more people that you can trust, or there's a lot more people that you can't trust. And you definitely have to be careful. But when I think about the attorneys that I've encountered that have really done the best, and the ones that survived and persevered, they had all three. And when I think about the people that have failed, most were missing at least one of the three. And trust is so interesting. I'll talk more about it today, but excuse me. And this isn't certainly a talk necessarily about morals, but when I don't trust someone and I really believe and realize that I can't trust them, I just cut them off and I don't have anything to do with them anymore. And it doesn't mean that I don't talk to them, but I don't trust them. So I don't trust them with information. I don't let them too close. I know that they're dangerous people. And I see that a lot. I see that with people. And a lot of times people will let slip things that show that they can't be trusted. They'll say everyone's out for themselves, or I did this and I did that. And when you see that people can't be trusted, it's very dangerous, and you have to be very careful. Law firms often can't be trusted. The people you're working for, companies you're working for can't be trusted. Bosses can't be trusted. Your peers can't be trusted sometimes, and you just have to be very careful. To succeed as an attorney, you really need to have all three of those things. And some are more important than others. And the first one, of course, is intelligence. And being an attorney does require a lot of intelligence. And intelligence means different things. Intelligence could mean the ability to learn over time. It could mean all sorts of things. And it doesn't mean necessarily where you went to law school. It doesn't mean being at the top of your class in law school. It doesn't even mean having the highest IQ. But the practice of law does have a lot of elitism associated with it. And so if you do want to work in the highest paying law firms in the largest cities with the largest clients, they are going to be looking, for the most part, for book intelligence. And what that means is they're going to be concerned about how well you did in school when you're recently out, not when you get too far out, but recently, if you're fairly new in the market, they're going to be concerned about that. And they want you to look good on paper. And then they do want natural intelligence associated with a high IQ, which is the ability to figure out complex problems and come up with solutions. I had two very interesting experiences with attorneys that were very smart that I hired to work for me before. And the smartest people, like the ones that have gone to law school when they're 16 and graduated at 19, was one of them. I think he went to Berkeley and he also got into Harvard. And another one that I think was third in his class, he knew he was 1 to 3 in his class because they give an award for the first through the third students, and they don't tell them which one's first and third. Extremely intelligent, like the ability to figure out problems and cut to solutions very quickly. And that makes a difference. Having a lot of people like that around can make a huge difference. And those were exceptional attorneys, but they certainly had other issues. But in terms of that abilities, that made them very good. So if you're up against people like that, that can be an advantage. And that's some of the things that the largest law firms attract, and they keep people around like that, provided they are able to build business and stuff. But I would estimate that probably you take less than 20% of people in the IQs within the top 5% of the population really work that hard and apply their intelligence in school, work, achievement, and doing the best they can. And I just remember when I've gone to reunions and things and watched the people that I've known have done, a lot of very smart people never do much because they don't apply that intelligence correctly, and they don't make good decisions with it. And what makes the best attorneys really good, I think, is that they're not just smart, but they apply those smarts and they're able to make very good decisions with the information that they get. And that's why the people that have promised to do well will get the highest salaries out of school and may do well throughout their career. And the thing is, and none of this is to be negative. It's really just to show you that you have to play on a playing field where you're going to do well. If an attorney that's not super intelligent is thrown in with a group of very intelligent attorneys and can't grasp concepts that are very complex quickly, put together connections between ideas, and then apply them in ways that are obvious but also non-obvious, then many times they really don't stand a chance. They're not moving fast enough, and they'll lose. And if you've ever seen an extremely intelligent attorney against one that's not it's not good, and it's just the way it is. And so there's certainly lots of practice areas where you don't need to be super intelligent like that. Almost all practice areas, there are people that you don't have to be intelligent, but that's really the kind of skill and level of understanding that the best law firms are looking for. And so another case that I thought was very interesting is I was once represented by an average attorney in a case before the Court of Appeals. And the attorney from the other side was so intelligent that they were literally 2 steps ahead of the appellate judges. They were 2 steps ahead of my attorney. They were out reasoning, and frankly, we had a much better case, in my opinion. But any arguments that judges had, they were turning on their head. And then when my attorney took the podium, he didn't even understand some of the arguments and was so disheveled that his collar was up and some other stuff. He just wasn't in good shape, and it was embarrassing. But anyway, the party opposing my appeal was still wrong, and the court ruled on my behalf. The guy's argument against my attorney was so good, I didn't think I had any reason really to win. I didn't think I would win. What you really have to do, because intelligence is so important to the practice of law, is you have to find a practice area that suits your smarts and your interests, where you're actually excited to learn more over time. And specific areas of practice do not require a ton of book smarts, but they require other types of intelligence. It's very rare. Personal injury relies on the fact that someone was hurt. That's the case. But there's a lot more to it. You have to prove damages and so forth. If someone's hurt and there's causation, you're going to get into court. And so regardless of how intelligent the other side's attorneys are or how complex their arguments are, most personal injury attorneys can get to trial. And then they can make very emotional and persuasive arguments, which is a skill that a lot of very smart attorneys don't have, but that's also a skill. And they can use skills like negotiation, persistence, selling a jury, maybe bullying the other side, and more. And these are skills. The average personal injury attorney, though, would probably have a very difficult case if they were trying to fight a contract and so forth being represented by a large corporation. It just wouldn't work. And the same thing in family law. I mean, family law attorneys are very exceptional, and there's a lot of very good ones, but most of them didn't go to the best law schools, which is perfectly fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because it makes use of skills other than raw intelligence. They have very rare talents, and they have the ability to tap into emotional arguments and turn them back on the other side, and intimidate people and get their clients enthusiastic when they shouldn't be. So there's all sorts of things about being a family law attorney that require a different set of skills. And they also require the ability to be interested in that. So your average bookish attorney is not going to be that interested in that type of work, but they might be. They might be interested in that kind of conflict. When law firms hire attorneys without the right firepower, what happens? Is those attorneys will quickly get run over by partners, associates, clients, and it can make a difference. So you have to realize what your skill is. Your skill working in the largest law firms with the most intelligent attorneys? It might be, but maybe it's a different type of skill. And if you're in a company that you're hiring an attorney, for the most part, if you're hiring an attorney that's not very smart, that attorney a lot of times is going to be defeated by the other side. I'll tell you one quick story that I was just thinking of. I had an attorney once that, someone that I was working with that had a relative that was an attorney, and the attorney had gone to, I don't know where they'd gone to school, but some barely accredited school, or maybe not even accredited. And he called him, he's like, "Where are you?" And he said, "I'm at City Hall." And he said, "What are you doing there?" And he said, "I'm looking up the code for this traffic case I'm working on." He's like, "Why don't you just look it up on your computer?" And he said, I really like to kind of get in front of the code and actually see the code and where it's applied. And I was like, that's just ridiculous. And this guy was able to pass the bar, but would do stuff like that. And that's just not smart. It doesn't make sense if you think about it. But anyway, I wanted to tell you about two super intelligent attorneys that I've encountered in my career. One of the attorneys was the youngest to ever graduate from top 10 law school. And out of his top 10 law school, I think graduated from Berkeley at 19, and he couldn't get hired. So he was actually recommended to work for me by a rabbi I was close with. And then the other attorney, I think, was, again, the guy that was number 1, 2, or 3 in his class. And that guy didn't want to join a large law firm. And he wanted to work regular hours and play video games with his girlfriend when he wasn't working. And so I threw them both into some major cases I was working on against major law firms. One of them was, it was like a major wage hour, not major, but it was a bunch of independent contractors or something that decided they should have been employees, even though it doesn't matter. But both of these guys were rapidly absorbed the information, and they came to conclusions and made arguments to properly resolve these cases against big firms. And they were able to do this without a lot of briefing and only through phone calls and just really figuring things out, very complex laws that other law firms hadn't been able to figure out. They cut through things and understood the solution very quickly. And I've seen very good attorneys do that before. When I was practicing, I once saw an attorney that was negotiating with another company. And they thought there was, hundreds of millions of dollars in liability against them. And he spent a weekend studying this company and everything, and was able to figure out, or that whatever happened, that the company actually owed them money. And so everyone was very nervous about it. So there's things like that. And then there's actually, and that's one of the examples right there that you can see on the screen, just a very smart attorney. And they had other attorneys that were just very good. Some of them really almost just were paid to sit around almost and think. And it's very interesting when intelligence is important. And then I once worked with a very smart tax partner in New York, and a few associates and another partner and I worked the entire summer on a tax problem. And in a few weeks in, we didn't understand what to do. We spent hundreds of hours researching, debating, trying to come up with a solution. And towards the end of the summer, I was speaking with a tax partner about an unrelated matter. He asked me what I was working on. I briefly explained it to him, and he spent about 10 minutes, maybe not even that, reviewing the file. And then within a few minutes of thinking, he just blurted out a solution. And the time back then was probably about $500, but he ended up saving the client millions of dollars. And if you think about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that went into that before he did it, without his help, he probably never would have gotten a solution. So intelligence can be massively important for you doing well. So you have to understand when you're trying to practice law, you have to know where you fit in. And to compete against the most intelligent attorneys is really no different than a club basketball player trying to play with a bunch of NBA stars. It just doesn't make sense. And all these people, and I'm not telling you to leave your dreams behind or anything to that matter, but so many people want to compete at a level where maybe they're not ready or maybe they won't do well. And it doesn't make sense because you're almost always going to lose. And why would you do something where you're going to lose? Now, that's not to say that there's something wrong with trying, you can't get your place. And I was listening to a guy speak last night who is about ready to release a book that's being distributed to every Walmart in the country. And I don't know, and he's like going on these speaking tours and he's on a television show, and he's, making a lot of money, and he's got everything. But he said something to me that was very interesting. He said, I've never been the smart kid in the class. I've never been smart, but what I've done that other people have never done is I've worked much harder than everybody. And that has gotten me results. And that may work. It does work, but not if you're swimming in the wrong pond. So I never would have had the ability I like basketball. I used to love playing basketball, but I never would have had the ability to compete with NBA stars. It just wouldn't happen. Generally, you're going to be much better working with attorneys in a practice area that has the same makes use of your skills and intelligence. And you just need to make use of your skills and do the best you can. And frankly, the most challenging practice areas, the largest and most selective firms, are going to require the highest intelligence. And I'm not making eugenics type arguments, but what I'm saying is that practice areas that are not consumer facing, which are, when I say they're not consumer facing, it means you're dealing with large companies, are things like corporate, commercial litigation, patent prosecution, where you're dealing with, I guess, inventors, but they can be bankruptcy for companies, tax for companies, ERISA, antitrust, require that the companies, and they pay a lot of money, and the bigger the firm, the more intelligent you're going to have to be for the most part to keep up and to get hired. And then there's other practice areas that are more consumer facing, which are things like personal injury, labor and employment, insurance defense to some extent, immigration, consumer litigation, consumer bankruptcy, criminal law, and where the fees are lower, and there's different skills that come into play. So it's just a different type of job. And the people that would be good at corporate probably wouldn't be good at criminal law. These practice areas attract different types of personalities, and there's just different types of people doing different types of work. I have nothing against that, and I don't making that in a special way. But what I am telling you is that if you're really interested in criminal law, but you think you should be a corporate attorney, that may not make sense. And right now, at this particular point in time, every time the economy does very well, and attorneys are looking for corporate jobs and getting corporate jobs and getting raises and moving into bigger firms from smaller firms, all the litigators and everybody wants to suddenly move into corporate. But most times they went into litigation because they liked writing, and they liked reading, and they liked fighting, or whatever they think is involved. And to suddenly go into corporate is not necessarily a good move. It can actually be harmful because it's a different thought pattern. Yesterday I was talking to a guy that is renting like a vacation house from me, and I could tell from his personality that he was a finance type guy and had gotten an MBA and so forth. And I'm not saying magical abilities, but most of the time there's a certain personality that kind of goes along with that, and it's a certain style of thinking that's communicated when you talk to people like that. So I picked that up right away. That guy would not be a good litigator probably, and I would probably not be good at what he does. So it's just different people have different personalities, and you have to really go in what you do well in. I know lots of personal injury attorneys that never worked for anyone that make much more money than almost all law firm attorneys I've ever met. I know people that are doing immigration that never practiced in a law firm and started their own law firms and bring in millions of dollars a year and have these national operations with attorneys and paralegals all over the country. So all this stuff you can do. You don't need to work in a big firm to be successful. And immigration, of course, all these practice areas require a lot of smarts, but they require a lot more in-person skills. They require a lot different things than other types of practice areas many times. The idea is that in consumer-facing practice areas, it's often going to involve other intangible skills, and that the skills in other practice areas may not have. These can be things like the ability to intimidate, the ability to play games, to make emotional arguments, to get people riled up, to intimidate the emotions of the other side, to be persistent, to wear the other side down, to follow the rules, to make good presentations, and more. And in consumer-facing practice areas, these sorts of personality skills are much more valuable than in a lot of corporate-related practice areas, where your personality and so forth corporate facing practice areas aren't as important. So that's the lowdown on intelligence. And I certainly apologize if I offended anyone. It wasn't my intention at all. But I will say that you have to decide, oops, let me just go back here. You have to decide what's best for you. Like Warren Buffett says, he hires people that are intelligent, but intelligence means different things. And so there are plenty of attorneys in New York City alone that went to Yale Law School and practice family law. There's people that I know personally in Los Angeles that practice family law, that went to Stanford and Harvard Law School. You have to do the practice area that makes you happy, where you feel like your intelligence skills are being made, where your skills and your intelligence are being made the most of. That may not mean being in a practice area where you're in a room and thinking and maybe a little bit more consumer facing. You make use of other skills. So just think about that, because you'll do much better if you're making use of all forms of your intelligence, not just your mind, but your social skills, your drive, and other things to be interested in something. The second one is the best attorneys need energy. And I really like this energy idea. And Tony Robbins once said, and I heard him say it, he said that, that when he's selling up on stage and stuff, he's selling two things. He's selling his ideas, but he's also selling his energy. And so you have energy to sell. And what I'm doing right now is a form of energy. Like I'm talking to you about something that is because I'm very energetic and excited about what I do for a living. I wouldn't be doing this probably if I was an insurance attorney. I would not be talking to people and answering questions because I wouldn't like it. So I may have the intelligence to be an insurance attorney, but it's not, for me, it's not where I get energy from. So you need to go into a practice area and do something where you get energy. And there's lots of things that give you energy, just like the Stanford attorney that I know that worked at actually Quinn Emanuel for several years and then became a family law attorney. That gives him energy. You have to do work that gives you energy. And I don't know how much I can emphasize that, because I think it's so important. And I think that there's so many attorneys that go through life and their careers doing things that don't give them energy. And it's actually very sad. It's sad. I see people dragging themselves into office buildings and there's just no enthusiasm really, and they don't have the energy. And so the two extremely intelligent attorneys I hired to work for me were brilliant, but they had no energy. One wanted to use his astonishing intelligence for only a certain number of hours a day, 5-6 hours a day, and then go home and play video games. And that's one of the reasons why he never wanted to work in a major law firm. He would have been a terrible fit, and he knew it. So he was smart. He took a job with me, and now he's a personal injury attorney, which is probably even better for him. But so there's really a prejudice too in the market for younger attorneys. And younger attorneys, the reason there's a prejudice in favor of them is they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. They're excited. They believe in the future. They want to work hard. They want to impress people. They want to get ahead. They want to learn. All these things that are very valuable. Investigated by, this is just insane, but by the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. in a formal investigation, because we had ads where law firms were saying they wanted 1 to 5 years in experience. And for whatever reason, the government thought that I had something to do with all this, which I think that someone had complained and they were just going through the motions. But that's just how law firms are. They want people with 1 to 5 years of experience. I don't set these rules. Sometimes it's more, and they're actually, because of the market right now, it can actually be a lot more than that. It can be, if you're a corporate attorney, they're interested in corporate attorneys with 10 plus years of experience. But it depends on the market. But generally, they want people that with 1 to 5, and that's always been the rule. It's because of their enthusiasm and their energy. And just look at the energy that most young attorneys have compared to older attorneys. As they get older, they get cynical. They want to go in-house. They're less focused. They've given up. It's not fun. Unless an older attorney is able to get a lot of business, it's going to be very difficult for them to be marketable as they get older. And that's just a part of it. And younger attorneys, they're many times willing to work hard. They don't have families to get home to. They have a lot of passion. And at some point, they may lose all this energy and become less marketable. So just something to think about. If an attorney is selling their intelligence in the market, they're also selling their energy and enthusiasm and ability to get things done and drive to get results. So I remember, several years ago, it wasn't that long ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, I called UCLA Law School to interview some law students because I wanted to hire some new attorneys who work in our office on some things. And some of the people that I was interviewing had great grades and And by all appearances, they would have been awesome additions. And so I called them in and I interviewed them. And these were it was the fall, and these people had not gotten jobs. And when I interviewed them, all of them lacked energy. They just lacked a lot of energy, and they were just dud, and there was no handshake, and they were looked tired. And really, having that energy is just something that the most successful attorneys need. And if they don't have it, then it's not good. And look around you at the attorneys that you see doing the best, and most of them have a lot of energy. They get up early. They get up at very early to work, or they work very late, or they're working every weekend, and then they're prioritizing their body and health and stuff so they do well. And these are all really important characteristics. You need to have energy. And the thing is, one of the things that I thought was interesting for me, and this is just a personal story, but I like this story, is when I started practicing law, when I was practicing law, it was all I could do to get into the office at 9 or 9:30. And I would, certainly get there maybe a little bit before, I don't remember. But when I started doing this, I liked it so much that I would find myself getting up unprovoked at 4:30 or 5 and starting work. And I'd never done that with anything. I'd never done that when I was in school. I'd never done that when I was practicing law, but suddenly I liked it. So if you like something and you have energy, that's great. You should like it, and you should like what you do and have energy. So just think about the energy an attorney needs, and what you would expect if you were trying to hire an attorney. You'd want someone who believes in you and who's going to do their best to get things done from you. And you wouldn't want someone who doesn't try their hardest or doesn't put in the extra time when necessary or cuts corners. You would want that energy, and it's very important. I prioritize in my career and in my life, making sure that I'm doing everything I possibly can to keep my energy up. And I'll tell you about that in a moment. But just keeping your energy up. But energy is like a very intangible thing. I think certain people have natural energy, and you can feel it when they walk into a room. You can feel it when you're standing by them. And if you want to be hired and get ahead in your career, you need to have a lot of energy and enthusiasm and drive, regardless of where you're working. And it's really your responsibility to do what you have to do to keep your energy up. No one in most law firms is going to tell you things like avoid drinking or abusing drugs or other substances. All those things slow people down. If you drink alcohol or too much alcohol, and if you have an addictive personality and you take too many drugs, it's most take things, I don't know, Ritalin and things now, but it used to be when I was, younger, people were doing things as bad as like harder drugs than that to keep going. And that always backfires. I've known people that were superstars, worked at major firms and do things like smoke crystal meth in the bathroom. It's just ridiculous. And it catches up with you. Drugs catch up with you. Drugs will slow you down. I mean, people get prescription drugs all the time that slow them down and make them much less effective than they should be. And there's nothing wrong with any of this stuff. And there's nothing wrong with drinking. There's nothing wrong with taking prescription drugs, but you have to be very careful about anything that dulls you too much, because you have to use it to make you more effective and not less effective. And so that's a fine line, but you need to be cognizant of all these things, anything you're putting in your body. You have to exercise. I think that exercising is very important for keeping your energy up. Almost all of the best attorneys that I know that are very good at bringing in business, that are very good at, have always exercised, even when they're at the busiest time of their life or in their career. I remember once every good attorney I've ever worked with has really, most of them, the ones that become very successful have prioritized exercise and doing very well. I remember one time I was staying in a hotel in Palm Springs, and there was a bunch of very successful attorneys there. And I got up in the morning very early and looked out the window, I don't know, like 5:30. And some of them were like running up the side of, I don't know if a cliff is the right word, but they were exercising before everything. And this was a long time ago, before the days of like really good gyms and stuff inside of hotels. So I thought that was interesting. So you need to exercise and take care of yourself. It's a way to take your mind off of yourself and to take care of your body, make you more effective. You need to meditate. Almost every spiritual discipline that's thousands of years old, whether it's Buddhism or Hinduism or Judaism or Christianity, there's different forms of meditation that are part of it. And you do that. You need to take time off. You need to have days when you don't check your email and so forth. There's different holidays for a reason. It's not just because animals need rest, because you need the chance to reflect. Watching your weight and avoiding unhealthy foods can make a huge difference. These are all things that help keep your energy. People like Tony Robbins is an example, just complete focus on what you put in your body. And in terms of food, eating nothing but live food is an example, or avoiding food, taking food that makes you healthy and not the opposite. And all this sort of thing makes a major difference in how well you do. It's just, these are all, each one of these things, eliminating drinking and drugs could make a huge difference for you. Exercising can make a huge difference. Meditating, taking time off, all these things with weight, healthy foods can make a huge difference. And then another one that's a major one that I take very seriously, I go to bed at 8 o'clock every night, is sleep. Because, and you should monitor your sleep. I use this isn't a commercial, by the way, but I use like a watch to like a sleep app to monitor my sleep. And then I wear a headband that tracks my hours and so forth, sleeping. But you have to track your sleep, because if you're not getting enough sleep, then you're not going to be as effective and have enough energy. So you need to watch that. And not a lot of people do, but your mind is going to be much more effective. Your energy is going to be much more effective. And then the final one that I like is just socializing with people outside of work, having very close family relationships, and being around people that support and give you energy, and that you can support and give energy, and not the opposite. And these are all things that make you healthy. And unfortunately, people don't do these things, or they do too much of one or the other. And that's not healthy. And this isn't Harrison's guide to health and fitness and stuff, but these are very important things, because almost all very successful people that I know that are attorneys are doing all these things. So there's a correlation between all of this. And to be very good at what you do, you have to do all these things. Now, some attorneys are so driven that they don't get enough sleep. That's one of the things I know that they don't. Some of them are so driven that they don't meditate because they don't have time. But for the most part, they do all these things. And then when they don't do one of them, like just not socializing with people outside of work or forming close family relationships, that can hurt you a lot. And so these are just some rules really to focus on to make yourself happy and have energy, because if you have that energy, you're going to be successful. And when Warren Buffett's saying he's hiring people that have energy, he's hiring people that probably have energy because they're doing all these things and they're doing a good job at them. And it's if you want to be weaker and less promotable and worse, then you're going to not do those things that I'm recommending, or you'll do too little or too much of them. Any one of these things, and I hate to keep coming back to it, can change your life. Sleep can change your life. Socializing with the right people that are going to give you good information stuff can change your life. Avoiding drugs or drinking or stopping them could change your life. Exercise can change your life. All those things you really need to prioritize. And I hate to say it, but I know so many people that have died young. I know so many attorneys. Like, I work with attorneys all the time that die. Some of them die in their 40s. One of them had a heart attack, and when he was like 45, he was a partner at a firm in New York, and he had it when he went home to visit his family. It's just sad. It's just, and it's because they do things that detract from their energy. So they may be driven by their spirit, but they do all these things, and you need that energy, because what you're selling as an attorney. So here's some ways that your energy is kind of measured. The number of hours you bill will show where you're putting your energy. The size of the clients you have and the number of clients will show your energy. And you need to maintain that energy, because you need to have something to give, and you need to have the ability to help people. And I've met attorneys in their 80s that have a lot of energy. Leading politicians are in their 70s and 80s, and so are many attorneys. So it's not just your age, it's understanding kind of the physical and emotional aspects of taking care of yourself and being enthusiastic about the things you're doing. There's other things too that I didn't really put in here, but socializing and find people that support you emotionally. Most successful CEOs have coaches. A lot of very successful people go see a therapist and to keep happy. I was amazed that when I was at high school, I knew a woman who was a therapist, or I knew her son who was a therapist, and he somehow found out like some of, I don't know who her patients were, and there were some kids in the school, and those kids actually were all like the happiest and the most popular kids. And I thought that was interesting. And it was only 2 or 3 kids that he mentioned, and I don't know that she was talking about patient confidentiality or anything, but I just remember that. And I thought that was interesting that maybe there was a correlation between how well they were doing. Just maintain your energy. You have to maintain your mind, your body, and take care of yourself. And then be enthusiastic about what you're doing. And if you love that, then you're going to get up each day and be enthusiastic. And if you don't like what you're doing, you're just not going to have the energy. So you need to be interested in what you're doing, and you need to want to do what you're doing. And because if you don't, you're always going to be looking for something else that gives you energy. You need to be doing a job that's going to give you energy. And you have to be enthusiastic about what you're doing. And if you show up and you don't have energy, you're going to lose the fight. I remember once I was interviewing with a big firm in New York, and this was after I'd already worked. I was at my second law firm 3 years or something, and I was interviewing with a very famous attorney, and he told me that he didn't think I seemed like I had a lot of energy for it, and he was right. I was tapped. I wasn't as interested anymore. Intelligence matters, but intelligence without energy rarely works. So you need to have energy, and that means being in the right practice area. It means working in the right location. It means working in a place where you believe you can succeed over the long run. It's very difficult, by the way, for an attorney to keep their energy up. And I think for me, I really like practicing law. I love the challenge of it. There's just so many things to love about practicing law, especially litigation. But the problem with it is, in my belief, that what for me was stressful, and one of the reasons I respect attorneys so much is you work hard, very hard, probably much harder than you need to. As an attorney, you'll be criticized by other attorneys and peers, and it's in a law firm. You don't know who your friends are. You're going to lose a lot, and you're going to feel attacked. And it's difficult. And then not only are you expected to work, but you're still expected to bring in business. Your future is often uncertain. And the longer you do it, it's actually much more stressful as a partner than it is an associate for most people. It can be very difficult. You need to figure out, if all this is coming at me, how do I take all that and make it into something good? There's different theories about how you control your mind. And the smartest people, of course, will take all this stuff and they overwork, saying this is incredible. I'm getting this great experience. I'm being criticized. I'm becoming better at what I'm doing. And what isn't it great that I'm at a place where I'm learning while I'm losing? But that's really good news too, because I know what I can't do next time. And so that's what's called cognitive behavioral thinking, where you just will talk about things to yourself in a way that makes you stronger. And every job that you have is really about energy. And when attorneys come to me looking for a job and they don't have energy, I know most of the time they're not going to get hired. Sometimes I talk to people and there's just so much lack of enthusiasm many times that when I talk to people that I know they're not going to get hired. But other times the enthusiasm when I talk to people is just palpable. They're just so excited. And this is a story that I told earlier about a recent graduate from UCLA that didn't have any energy. And so what I'm saying is that you need to have a lot of energy, and you need to be excited. You need to talk to yourself about in a way that gives you energy, and you need to understand how important this energy is. And getting it obviously there's a lot of different ways, but the highest performing attorneys always have a lot of energy, and then they do whatever they can to get a lot of energy. I was at a party a couple of years ago, and I was talking to an attorney that had tried a case with one of the most well-known attorneys in the country, and they were having breakfast before the trial, and I think they were out of a town somewhere. And the attorney opened a plastic pill organizer and asked the other attorney about his energy level. And then my friend looked at him quizzically, and he pointed at each of them, the attorney, and said, take your pick. This one is good if you had enough sleep. This one is the best if you've had enough sleep for several days. This one is good if you've had sleep, but you need to be sharper than normal. And this was good if nothing else is working. And my friend, who told this story because everyone knew who this attorney was, but everyone was rapt, thought it was funny. But then this attorney said, do you think I could be expected to perform at this level for years on end without some outside stimulus? And I don't know what those pills were, if they were illegal or not. It could be vitamins for all I know. But I thought that was very funny when I heard the story, that's how important energy was for him. And then Dave Asprey, who's well known for biohacking He's created books and seminars, articles, podcasts, and videos that really pretty much promote maintaining peak energy. He talked about how, and I'm not really a follower of his, but I did watch a video of his once. He talks about how he uses a prescription stimulant to promote his energy. He uses bulletproof coffee, which he founded, and multiple vitamins. However, he also relies on a prescription stimulant. I don't know if that's the right thing to do. Probably not, because it'll catch up with you. But at the same time, all these successful people are thinking about energy. And when it comes to stimulants, I don't think they're worth the cost. Most people that take stimulants die early. I know lots of attorneys that have died in their 30s and 40s. I know tons of them that have gotten cancer, and you have to be careful. Anthony Robbins, who I mentioned earlier, doesn't even drink coffee. I unfortunately drink coffee, and I'm not saying I'm perfect in terms of health, but he's got a lot figured out. He can stand up on stage and jump up and down and talk for 18 hours at a time without, using the bathroom or drinking or anything, and that's pretty amazing. That's something that he believes in, energy, and a lot of very successful people do believe in energy. So if the job you're doing is not empowering you, then you have to address the problem. And I think, in my opinion, when you have a lack of energy, and there's Chinese terms, all medicines and stuff. There's qi and Chinese medicine, but the lack of energy is often, in my opinion, a sign that something else fairly serious is wrong. And you could be in a bad marriage or in bad relationships and have people close to you that are upsetting you, and I don't know, or just something's negative in your life, or some people you're around are negative. You may have some sort of depression that is just biochemical. It could be that needs to be medicated, or you may have something wrong, or you may have some sort of thyroid issue or other medical issue. There's all sorts of things that can cause energy, or you just honestly, you may be doing a job you don't like, or you may have unresolved psychological issues. I don't know, but regardless, you should fix them, and you should get your energy back, because energy is a huge thing, and there's so much that causes us to have bad energy, and there's so much that can cause us to have good energy, and surrounding yourself with good energy is really important. And for me, I try to do my best to surround myself with positive people. I try to, that gives me energy, and I try to take time in my day every day to help others. This is part of my job, but I enjoy it. But I also do things like every day I make sure that I contact at least one person, and that I know that it's non-professional, and I have a nice interaction with them and tell them things I appreciate about them. And that to me is just putting positivity. I exercise every day, do yoga every day. I meditate most days. I don't drink alcohol. Most of the time I eat raw food, and I'm a vegetarian, and I try to do the work that I enjoy most and avoid a lot of the stuff that I don't. And then I also take time off from work. So I don't generally work more than 3 or 4 months without taking at least a week off. But still, I don't have as much as I would like, and with a lot more energy. And doing this job gives me, my point to you, you need to do, gives you need to figure out a lifestyle that gives energy, because an energy and things that are sapping away from it are going to good. You're not going to have the long. And, you should be in a practice area, people, or an organization. It's not a law firm, and become charged and have energy, and it's extremely important. I hope that you're that. And it's important. All I can say to you is that success, and I'll just leave, have energy, and that part of the game, and that's part of what they do. Not about just hours. It's more about having energy, or happily do, or it's not just having business energy to go out and want it, or it's about practicing law, but it's on a way that gives me energy and not. Examples are when I do things that I like, I energy exercise before exercise. I have much more after meditate, before meditate. Energy eating a healthy than I do eating an unhealthy meal. So things that give you energy are extremely important. And crux, what's important. I remember Palm Beach years ago. I was looking at at a Tony Robbins event, and I was the on before, and so I got to use his dressing room, and I couldn't like coconut and olive give you energy. There was he had a thing that shaped like a turbosonic. He had all this incredible food like in the refrigerator. There were fruits that had been opened up and sliced things, and so doing whatever sure that he energy shake this thing lean every morning. And these are just very good things, because if you can do these sorts of things, much happier person, you're going to have more to give. So this final one, I'm really glad for last. I know I talked a little bit, but the things about practice is a lot of attorneys don't have integrity. You know what I say? A lot of people and don't really level integrity should. Legal professionals always encourage the most integrity, and a lot of attorneys will get away with a lot of person. And integrity is, unfortunately, I've had experience dealing with a lot that don't have integrity, and unfortunately, I spoke not too long ago with someone who'd been of super finance for about 30 years, and something that I thought he said, bookkeeper and anybody, and they're not monitored, checks and balances, watch. Almost all those bookkeepers will end up, even if they honestly, where he's ever seen, almost all of them will end up. And just the temptation for a bookkeeper and working in a company, there's $100 in the account, you need $500 to pay an expense or something, you can pay him back to come up. Well, borrow since no one noticed the 500. Don't pay it back. Notice the, and then in their personal life, they would like can come with a rash back. They should justify. And then sometimes what'll happen will just get deep. They may move house, their site, they start. It's a thing different, and they just will many times raise this. They may never get caught. The opportunity person was almost ever, which the sad humanity. I don't know if I can take the word of do that. The first book, nice one, didn't. The second one was a very person didn't steal. The third, he did steal himself a. Fourth one, this person steal. Fifth one, well, they were working, but then had all my bank accounts. They started airline money off American Express, my account. It's just it happened. I don't know. It's unfortunate, but so about you, question that you should think about, and this is a form of stealing, is your billing accurate? The legal environment, and this is an integrity issue, because if you're doing something that's not it doesn't have integrity, then you'll start. Many people, when they do things that don't, they in other ways. So they'll make, so they'll it's just a subconscious thing, but you have to make sure it's accurate. I've attorneys, and a lot of them will just find endless reasons to get billing things. They won't. If I have a problem and they can solve it for $5, they'll keep the ball rolling. They don't need to. And the anything. But the other thing I saw that many attorneys are not saying this. Anybody in the law firms I worked in, I don't really have anything to say about anybody, but I do know that of attorneys that have certainly padded their hours, and they'll say that they worked hours and they did. And that's very common. Is that the right thing to do? Not if that's the agreement that you've made with the client, is to pay them by the bill. So when I was in law firm, I always did a lot of hours. And once I was told to bill something even I thought about in the shower. Like I said about it, the attorney was like, "Oh, you're in the shower, and down your time if you minutes, keep track of it." But the whole time I was in law firms, I never had a single one of my bills questioned. And But attorneys are always fired, and many times fired and not given bonuses for not billing enough hours. And had an attorney be asked if they really bill as many as they reported they did. I don't know that the legal profession is doing this, or just billable professions in general are honesty. But I do know that many times attorneys will work on matters as long as they can and write down as many hours as they can to generate a lot of billable hours. I got a bill once for, I don't know, $30 to $40 for someone reviewing a trademark. And when I had it done by another firm, it hadn't even cost much. I don't know. And I knew many attorneys reconstruct at the end of the month by listening to voice with emails to remember what they'd done. But it's a lot of how the profession works. Whatever you can do to really try to be honest with your hours and other stuff, I believe is important. Just me talking about the negativities of this and the hours. There's a lot of other forms of dishonesty, and I'll talk about them. But many attorneys are honest, and the majority probably are. If you're a client, you're going to the clients coming to you because they trust you, and attorneys don't want to have dishonest attorneys. They don't want another. Dishonesty is like a cancer, because once it starts and infects people, you may pad your hours, you may overwork and then you may be dishonest in another matter and another, and it continues, and pretty soon, and you'll be in trouble. And done a case with a junior partner, and I was at the beginning stages of the case, and I realized that we could probably get the case very quickly dismissed. I've been in a motion because there were a couple motions. One of them I thought was a statute of limitations, and I wrote and said he didn't need me to come to the court. He'd argued himself, but at the time I lived very close to the Los Angeles courthouse downtown, so I decided to watch the hearing. And when I walked over, I realized he'd removed the statute of limitations argument, and of course, without that there, he lost the motion. And what was funny too was when he saw me in the audience, I'll never forget. I still can see the look on his face, because it was kind of like, you know what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. But right away, I realized he intended to lose the motion papers at the last moment. I didn't trust his attorney going forward, and certainly other attorneys at other firms padded their hours. A lot of them have done it against me. I certainly didn't trust either. And there's just lots of people, and the practice law is about, for a lot of attorneys, it's about survival and making money. But some of them play games, and I think that dishonesty is really a sign of fear, because if you're dishonest, then you're afraid that you can't get ahead by playing the rules. You fear that you're not good enough. You may fear that you need to take advantage of every opportunity to take an advantage. And if you're dishonest, you're going to get caught eventually. When an unethical attorney is exposed, no one generally wants anything to do with them anymore. Most of this honest attorneys are small. They're not working for large clients. They self-sabotage them, and they're not as happy as they could be. And the reason a lot of facing practice areas like family law and so forth often can have a bad reputation compared to some other practice areas, because a lot of times people do feel taken advantage of. I think that if you're dishonest, you're going to eat yourself up by being dishonest. If I was writing down false hours every day, I wouldn't feel good about myself. Everyone that does something wrong always justifies it in some regard. They'll say, "Oh, this is a big company; they can afford it," or "I spent this time doing this, and maybe I should have been paid more." I don't know, or the client made a lot of money or saved a lot of money using us. But I think when you're honest and people see that, they're more likely to do business with you in the future. I think you're going to be more respected by your colleagues, clients, and others. I think that you're not going to have guilt that's going to eat you up inside, and which it will, unless you're a sociopath. And you're not going to have health issues or substance abuse problems. And so I believe that honesty is the best policy. And the reason I think Warren Buffett talks about this is, you really, once someone's dishonest, they're almost always dishonest again. So all the people that I've ever worked with or that have told me, "Oh, I did this really dishonest thing, but I've learned," and so forth, and I've done this and I'm better now, and they almost always go back at some point to that dishonesty, and so I think that's very harmful. I think you certainly can rehabilitate yourself after being dishonest, and you should, but you just, if you get the reputation of not being honest and not doing what you say you're going to do and being someone that can't be trusted, then people just don't want to work with you. Clients don't want to work with you, and people avoid you in the future. And you leave this trail of negativity behind you. And it's a very subtle thing. And frankly, most attorneys don't have that, but a lot of them do. And then that those feelings that are associated with that will eat you up inside. They'll cause psychological problems. They'll cause relationship problems. You'll deal with them in destructive ways, which could be substance abuse, or I don't know, promiscuous, or I don't know, it's just all sorts of bad behavior. So you need to really concentrate on that. And there's a reason that that this is such an important concept of society. You have jails and prisons and rules and professional responsibility and religions and all these things. It's a very important thing. And the idea is, if you can't trust someone, then what do you do? Energy, intelligence, and integrity are the three qualities that I would want in an attorney too. And an absence really of any of these is going to be fatal. And you need to work towards being all three. And if you don't have these qualities, you're not going to be referable. And if you do, you're going to be hireable and referable. Think about what you would want. If I was looking for an attorney, I would want someone that was, very smart, very enthusiastic, and that I could trust. And that's pretty simple. I like these three things, and they're certainly not for me, but reflecting on them, I think they can help you. So that's all I have. I am going to take a quick break for just a few minutes, 2 minutes, and then when I come back, I will answer as many questions as you guys have. You can answer questions about, or ask questions about anything that you have related to your career. All the questions are anonymous, and I always try to give as much information as I can to be helpful to you based on my experience. But I hope today's webinar has been helpful so far. Thanks. Okay, let's go to pull up these questions. Give me 1 second. I'll share for a second. I'll try to do this on a blank document just so you guys can see. Okay, so let's get started. What question should an attorney ask in a law firm interview? First question. This is the first question. Let me make this a little bigger for you guys. What questions should an attorney ask in a law firm interview? Let's see here. Is that 200 already? Okay, there are a bunch of articles on BCG that kind of talk about that. What kind of questions would be good to ask? And so I'm happy to comment on that if you like. But in general, you want to ask questions that talk a little bit, that are about, we'll talk about your kind of experience. So let me just see here, pull up a. Let's see, here's questions. So here are some articles here. Here's one that I did. I don't know if this is mine. Let's see here. But these are some kind of common ones. And then top 23 interview tips is always helpful. Top 10 interview questions. But there's a bunch of articles on BCG about this. So I would really recommend looking at these. 25. Oh, here's one. The 45 worst questions. This is actually a funny one, I think. But actually, maybe not. Let me just say, this is mine. But this is really how this is the ones that I look at working from home, hours. So just be careful about these different questions if you ask them. An unwillingness to do certain types of work. Those are, I would be more careful about what questions many times you do ask than the ones you don't. So let me just see here. Some more definitive guide to legal interview questions. Oh, here's another one. No, I don't know. Maybe this is. Oh, wow. Look at that. It's another law school and this is actually by one of our recruiters. So that's good. So these are just some examples of questions. But if you search for that, there are a lot of examples of questions and the ones you should be asking. But I think it's a great question. This question is: do patent attorneys make a lot of money? So a patent attorney is interesting. So let me just, I don't know, I copied that correctly. Patent attorneys can make a lot of money. It depends on the firm you're working at and what kind of work you're doing. For those of you that aren't aware, patent attorneys most of them pass the patent bar. You have to pass the patent bar to practice before the Patent and Trademark Office. And what that means essentially is there's a branch of there's a different type of court where you write patents to, and where that approves patents and where you argue whether or not a patent's valid. And so you have to be part of that. So patent attorneys can make a lot of money, but one of the problems is the work is very scientific in nature. It doesn't necessarily make use of writing skills and so forth. So a lot of what's happening is that the costs are being pushed down for the work by competition from overseas. So a lot of the work patents are now written, a lot of them in China and India and things like that. So that's happening a lot. And then also because it requires the same sort of skill, you don't need necessarily to be in a big city to write a patent. There's people that are in small towns in Colorado that are writing the most important patents for Amazon and people like that. So patent attorneys can make a lot of money depending on their skill. I've known patent agents that make $500,000 or more per year, just patent agents. And that means you can write patents without even going to the without even going to law school. And the big thing about a patent attorney is that they are quite rare because they have to have a scientific degree, and there's certain types of classes they have to take in order to qualify to even take the patent bar. And then once they take the patent bar, they have to have the ability to get the training and stuff to write patents. So yeah, you can make a lot of money as a patent attorney, but at the same time, there is a lot of competition. It's becoming much harder. In most cases, attorneys that do things that are related to electrical engineering and computer circuits are much more employable than patent attorneys that are doing things related to biotech and so forth, and mechanical and that sort of thing. Patent attorneys can make a lot of money, but at the same time, it's a much more crowded field than it used to be. It didn't used to be very crowded at all. So when I started doing this in 2000, you would see people being offered a $50,000 starting bonus stuff. It was absolutely insane because there just weren't enough of them. I find it interesting that you have energy as one of those qualities, because in my experience, my energy seemed unprofessional. I thought you said my energy seemed unprofessional, which I was fine to answer. My energy seemed unprofessional. How do you manage when you have a lot of energy and others you work with don't? Your energy comes across. Energy can come across in your writing. But I would just say your work product, your attention to detail. And what is that? That's energy. Your enthusiasm for more information, your ability to work hard, to detail, to more ability to constantly improve, all these things. So all these things can really help you get more energy, I think, just to a great extent. And so if you do a good job with all that, then you put your energy into things that people don't see. Einstein, for example, I'm sure he may have been very good socially. I have no idea, but his energy came across in his work and the attention to detail and his enthusiasm for the subject matter. If you're in a law firm or a legal environment where everyone's very serious, then and energy does seem unprofessional, then you just make sure you put your energy into things like that. And then if you don't like the environment you're in, then go somewhere else. I remember, I'll never forget it. I told the story probably several times, but just one time I was interviewing with this law firm, and they had these very nice kind of partition offices in downtown Los Angeles in a skyscraper. And they sat me in a very uncomfortable French, almost dining room table type chair for a long time. And I was sitting there for 20 minutes, didn't hear a sound. And I just thought it was very unusual, like being in that kind of position, talking to a firm like that. And people certainly didn't seem like they had a lot of energy there. They seemed much too serious. And I did not like it. That's just a thought that I had. I don't know. If I was working there, I guess I would have to do a very good job of my work. But you have to be careful about the energy. Let's see. And so I think there's a follow-up to the patent attorney question. What other types of areas besides being a patent attorney required a skill-specific bar exam is state bar admission prerequisite of the specific bar exam? So I think you can actually be a patent agent. You can be a patent agent if you go to law school and never take the bar exam, but the state bar exam. But in order to be a patent attorney, you do need to take the bar exam. And I think I think to call yourself a patent attorney, you would probably need to take the bar. But no, a lot of times people take the patent bar way before they take the bar exam, and they just take the bar exam in order to become a patent attorney. And if you're a patent agent, many times because you're practicing, or patent attorney, because you're practicing federal law, you can many times the firms, it depends on the firm, but you could take an easy bar exam don't quote me on this because I don't want to give anybody advice, it's wrong. But if you're only practicing federal law and you're only practicing patent law and that's all federal, I believe that you could take the easiest bar exam that you wanted to in any other state and then practice patent if you're just practicing the patent bar. But I'm not 100% sure. That's not my area of expertise, but that's what I think a lot of people do. See here, the auto quality is cutting. I apologize for that. If that's happening, we'll fix that next week. I don't know why that would be happening, but I'll work on that. Can you explain a typical day in a big firm versus a small firm? Okay, that's a good question. It really depends on the firm that you're in, but the biggest difference is going to be in larger law firms. You will often be working on larger matters, and so if you're working on larger matters, you'll tend to be working on on more segmented types of work. And if you're in a smaller boutique firm, you'll typically be doing more of the matter that you're working on. So, just to give you an example, like if you're in New York City working at a large corporate law firm, you may be working only on one aspect of a transaction. And there are literally in some corporate law firms, people that specialize in just a few paragraphs of a certain type of transaction. And you couldn't do that in a boutique firm unless you were in a boutique firm concentrated on that type of transaction specifically. But that's how big law firms work. You're more likely to be writing memos and stuff and doing research as a first year than or even second or third year in a big law firm. Then if you were in a boutique firm where you'd be more likely to be actually going to court or more involved. And so there tends to be a lot more responsibility in large law firms versus big firms, boutique firms. Many times large law firms also get large because they have much larger clients and work on larger matters that require more staffing and more people doing individual functions. And boutique firms are boutiques because they tend to concentrate on one thing. So there's lots of boutiques that do patent law. There's lots of boutiques that do healthcare law, that do government contracts and all sorts of special healthcare risks, all sorts of specialized types of work. And those particular firms may do all aspects of a transaction, but that's the difference between a boutique firm. Boutique firm, you're also more likely to get more contact with partners as a younger attorney and more involvement in different aspects of the case. And that's the main things that I would emphasize. Ooh, this is a big question. I'm excited about it. I love it when I get long questions like this. So this was a good one coming up. Although I have a lot of energy, I'm also experiencing a lot of bitterness and anger over certain disappointments I've encountered, and I'm still a law student. Law school, and a lot of my classmates went to large law firms. I struck out. I was fortunate to get a summer position in a smaller firm. Nevertheless, because my goal is to work in one of these large law firms, I feel extremely frustrated how this played out. I feel bitter and resentful towards people I interviewed who I feel wrote me off. It is something that I still carry with me. Sometimes it motivates me, but other times it is too consuming. Should I put my energy in trying to get over this feeling? Is it holding me back? Well, that's a great question, and thank you, by the way, for asking that, because I think a lot of people on this call are likely to feel the same way about a lot of things and a lot of disappointments that they've had, and I can identify with. It's no fun not being chosen by groups or being rejected by groups and not feeling like you belong or feeling like you don't belong and not always understanding the reasons why. So that's extremely and very, very kind of touching statement for me to hear, because I think that what you're feeling is very common for a lot of attorneys, law students, and others. One of the things that was interesting is some of the most successful attorneys that I know in the country. When I say the most successful, people that you read about in headlines and all that sort of stuff, just caught up at different speeds. They didn't get what they wanted right away, but they kept trying. You need to keep doing what you're doing and not give up. But I'll tell you a couple quick stories about two of the more successful attorneys that I know in the country. One of the most successful attorneys that I know in the country was a attorney in New York, and he, I don't know how many times, but it was something like 4 or 5 times, probably because he was working so hard, but still didn't pass the bar exam. And no one talks about it anymore because he's powerful. And I'm not even going to mention his name because I don't want to even put the information out there about who he is. It's just, it doesn't matter. And now he's, it's the right word, but an incredible attorney and does very good work as an attorney, has huge clients. But imagine that person's feeling when they kept failing again and again, and started off a big firm, then lost their job after failing a couple of times, and another one, but it landed on their feet. Another attorney I know went to a top law school, and just like you, and same thing with the first attorney, and got a summer associate at not a great firm, like a mid-sized firm, and didn't get an offer, and then failed the bar, and then eventually got a job, but it was with a small, tiny little firm, and now is head of the office of one of the top law firms in the world, and I'm still quite young. So you have to understand that many times, whatever the force is, people throw things in your direction. Some people aren't ready when they take the bar exam. Some people aren't ready when they interview with firms the first time. Some people aren't ready even when they're trying to get a job the second time. Some people aren't ready when they apply to law schools. Some people aren't ready when they're in law school. And that doesn't mean that you failed. That just means that's something that's testing your resilience. And the only solution to all this is to put your head down and do exactly what you're doing, which is, I'm telling you that this one of these people that I just brought up to you, and of those two people, is someone that went and read all my stuff and studied it and became a student of it. I don't know anything special. I'm just have a skill of observing and watching and seeing what works, and interested in self-improvement. But it's not that, I've necessarily done all this stuff as an attorney myself. I just watched other people and do this every day of the week and talk to people all day long. My advice to you is, you can't worry about yourself. You have to believe that there's something outside yourself that's bigger than you, that's controlling everything that happens. And if you put your energy into things and do the best you can, you will begin putting on the appearance of someone that looks like they belong in a big firm and doing everything you possibly can. I'm going to give you 2 book recommendations that, for me, personally changed my life. One of them is Think and Grow Rich, which has all this stuff about persistence and all this sort of thing. Very famous book, one of the most famous books ever. I also like Unlimited Power by Anthony Robbins. That book, I read Think and Grow Rich first, and then I read that. Those books really helped me because I really used these quite a bit when I was your age, or assuming your age. And I Think and Grow Rich is actually out of print, so you can just probably get a PDF of it online. But both of these books, mainly Think and Grow Rich, talk about having goals and manifesting things. And then people talk about all these different principles like manifesting and stuff. But manifesting basically means imagine where you want to be, and spend 15 minutes a night thinking about that, how it would look getting there, being there. And that's something that all the most successful people in the world have done. They manifest things by thinking about them. And I don't know that manifest is the right word, because they certainly talk about it in Think and Grow Rich. They talk about it in Unlimited Power. You just need to imagine what it is you want. And then once you start doing that, what happens is your subconscious will take you there. And right now, you're imagining, you're in your own mind, and you're comparing yourself to others, and that's not healthy. You don't want to be in that state. You want to be in a state where you're just worrying about yourself, and you're not worrying about yourself, but you're just doing the best you can. You need to be external. Your external is, how can I provide? So there was a girl that I hired once that worked for me as an attorney in my office, and I don't think she liked working for me very much, but that doesn't really matter. And what she did that was very interesting, right after she'd always say, I want to do this for you. I want to see what else I can do. I want to try to do better. I want to do this. I want to do this. And it was very externally motivated, even though she didn't like her job. And before she started, she wrote a really nice note thanking me for the job. The day after she started, she wrote a note thanking me for the job. And then a year later, when she quit, She also wrote me a very nice note thanking me for the job. So everything she did was very externally focused and very impressive, actually. And she didn't like the job because it was too stressful and it wasn't what she bargained for, but she managed to be external about it, keep herself happy and keep myself happy. And it's gone on to do very well doing other things. But the point is that you have to think externally and not internally. And I think that if you do, that's going to help you. My computer is so slow. It's very strange. How do you think legal research is more important in the field of criminal cases versus corporate? Legal research is important in all fields. The better legal researcher you are, the typically you can find solutions to problems that others will miss. So I don't know. I think it's important in corporate and criminal. The kind of research that's done in corporate is often much different than criminal, but I think that they're both very important. How is corporate law different than other practice areas? Well, corporate involves it's transactions, it's mergers, it's making sure companies their papers are in order, a bunch of things like that. Whereas other practice areas, which could be things like litigation, are writing. But there's a lot of, if you go to BCG, there's practice area guides. One of the things about corporate that's very interesting is a lot of the work it's very detailed in some respects, clerical work. It's contracts. It's a lot of nitty gritty and very detail oriented compared to litigation, for example. So the people that tend to enjoy doing corporate law are often people that are very good at things like math and science, and the people that are good at things like litigation typically are good at things like reading, history, and those types of practice areas. And then people that aren't good at patent law are typically people that are good at math and science as well. And then, so you have to go where your interests lie. But people that like corporate are very interested in being and helping businesses and working for businesses and making sure things are organized properly in businesses and making sure transactions go off smoothly and avoiding problems and that sort of thing. So it's definitely a different type of position. Okay, this is a job search question. I started my search by applying to positions posted on LinkedIn, which has proven ineffective. This is not encouraging, but I have a lot to offer and determined to find a position that is a better fit for me. Is it normal to feel dishonest searching for a job? And two, what other avenues would you recommend searching for a job? Okay, if you're applying for positions on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's a good resource, of course, but anytime you're applying to positions on a job board like LinkedIn, that means that you're applying to positions that other people are also applying to en masse, and that can make it much more difficult for you to find a position. I do recommend, it depends on what kind of qualities you have. I think recruiters are good, definitely. Recruiters I get people jobs every day. So a good recruiter can work because they have access to a lot of information. Direct mailings can work if they get to the right people. Direct mailings are very effective. Also, just researching firms in your practice area online, just with Google is very good, and doing that. And then some other resources, we have one called Law Crossing Concierge, and then we have another one called Law Crossing. So those are two good sources of jobs you can certainly use, but then I always recommend applying to as many places as you can. The benefit of Law Crossing is Law Crossing, in addition to showing you active jobs, it's showing you jobs that other people aren't applying to because they're not being posted publicly. So they may be on the law firm's website, they may be on the employer's website. So that's good. Your other question is it normal to feel dishonest searching for a job? I don't think so. The reason is because if I call a partner in any large law firm in the country and I have a better opportunity for them, the odds are probably 50-50 they're going to talk to me and we'll go out and interview. I don't know if it's 50-50, it may be more depending on the market and the firm they're at, but most people that are smart about their career are always looking for something new. And that doesn't mean that you should be a job hopper, but if there's something wrong about why your position is not a better fit, then by all means, talk to people. Now, there's different benefits of searching for a job in different ways. One of the things that I've noticed as a recruiter is it's extremely rare. It's only happened to my candidates, I think one time when the candidate had done something illegal that a firm that got his resume knew about, and they contacted his existing firm. Other than that, I've never, in the tens of thousands of candidates I've worked with, I've never had an issue come up where someone's confidentiality has been disturbed. I think that law firms are very careful about disturbing the confidentiality and letting it leak out if a recruiter's involved, because then the recruiter will stop doing business with them and tell other people. So a recruiter can protect your confidentiality. There is some risk to your confidentiality when you're applying to stuff on your own, but almost never. Large law firms aren't going to disturb your confidentiality. I suppose it's possible, but most law firms won't. The only time you get into that maybe are with small law firms and small markets where two attorneys know each other and are competitive and are jerks, but that rarely happens as well. So that's the only concern I would have about looking for a job. But almost very few employers ever will disturb your confidentiality. Okay, let's see here. All right, a bunch of questions about freshers. It says, can a graduate from a different country become a patent attorney? Yes, if you're in, I don't know where you are, but you certainly can become a patent attorney. You have to come to the US and then I believe take an exam. But come to think of it, I haven't seen a lot of patent attorneys from other countries. Maybe there's a bar at the federal level, but I don't think there is. So you would need to, you could become a patent agent, I believe, from another country. And then if you became a patent agent, you could certainly go to law school or get an LLM and become a patent attorney. But again, don't quote me on this. This is not my expertise. I'm just telling you what I think is possible. So I think law graduates that haven't passed the bar exam are just they can be called law graduates, or they can be called attorneys, or not attorneys. They can be just called law graduates. Sometimes you just call them clerks. Okay, thank you, everybody. I appreciate all the questions today, and I look forward to talking next week. Thank you.